I'm Liz Marion, your virtual events producer, and today we are having a town hall on healthcare benefits and your business, which is a topic that comes from many of you telling us that this is something that you wanted to talk about as entrepreneurs and that you were struggling with as a challenge in your business for how to approach it. We're also going to launch a poll in just a second that we want you to participate in so that we can gauge where you are at in your business to tailor our conversation today. A couple housekeeping things. If you would just drop all of your questions for our guests in the Q&A box that you will find. It is 2 chat bubbles that's at the bottom of your Zoom window. And then if you want to chat amongst yourselves, again, if you're just joining us, please drop where you're calling in from into our chat window. That will be open for you to talk amongst yourselves and to ask our staff any questions. If you're interested in Bunker Labs programming, please email us at townhall@bunkerlabs.org, and we're happy to answer your questions, or you can just go to bunkerlabs.org as well. But without further ado, I want to introduce first our facilitator today for our town hall, who is a city leader out of Des Moines, Iowa for Bunker Labs, Bernie Stone. Hey, Bernie.
Hey, I really appreciate the ability or the opportunity to do this today. Very topical, Rona. And so what we want to do today for this piece is many of you are familiar with Bunker Labs doing the Equip, Connect, and Inspire bit of programming. So today is seriously, it's an Equip. We want to get you the right information and ideas. So we'll start off real quick with a poll, and we would like to ask you how many, the first one, do you currently provide health care to your employees? This will just give us a sense of where in the conversation that we're at. So please answer that. And then how many employees leads to some information later on in terms of the legislation and where do we go from there. So I'm answering that myself and submitting. Perfect. I am a city leader in Des Moines. I'm also in the private equity space. Joining me today, we have Neil and Roger, 2 great Americans, both veterans, both entrepreneurs who are killing it in their respective fields. Gentlemen, if you could introduce yourselves, we'll start with Roger.
Hello, everybody. I'm Roger Holbert with Legacy Health Consultants right out of the Des Moines metro area here in the middle of Iowa. A little bit about myself. I did 4 years for Uncle Sam's Army, and when I got done with that, I went on to pursue a nursing career at the University of Iowa, which, crazily enough, at about the turn of me finishing that up, I realized that this space was really needed, and as everybody was escaping, with the current legislation and all the things that came up with the Affordable Care Act, I somehow went in reverse course and went headlong into it. And I found myself in a really great place to help people, individuals all the way up to businesses, even into the senior market at times when it needs to be. So I'm happy to be here, and I thank you for asking me to join in on this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Neil?
Hi, everyone. My name is Neil Mahoney. I'm with the company Shipping Butler. I did 10 years in the Navy. Upon getting out of San Diego, I came up to LA, got an undergrad at USC, and started my first small business, which was a CrossFit gym. So I really stayed in the service industry of helping people, health and wellness, built a sizable team there of about 20 trainers, then went on and got my MBA from UCLA, stayed in the health and wellness space. This time it was in vitamins and skin cream. Did fairly well there, got to know a lot about taking products to markets and distribution. And since then, I've started another company, a 3PL, third-party logistics, which fulfills e-commerce orders. I've been doing that for the past 3 years and currently have 11 employees.
Awesome.
So I'm happy to be here and share my experience and failures and successes with navigating these benefits of offering to employees, how to help with retention, what works, what doesn't work, all that stuff.
Yeah, and so based upon those two introductions, if it's not clear to our attendees, Roger is our healthcare expert, Neil is our business expert, so we have the offerer and the consumer. I'd like to start with a question. We asked the VIR cohorts, VIR, Veterans and Residents, it's one of our bits of core programming for Bunker Labs, consult your city leader or check us out online. We asked the VIR cohorts some questions like relating to healthcare, and this is one that came in. And this is from the question. In the past, I have lucked out and hired people that don't need healthcare because it is in place already, whether that's the VA or TRICARE or healthcare through a spouse. But I know this won't always be the case. How do I make the leap? And that's why we're here today. Roger, how would you start that answer?
Well,
it's huge, I know.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of it starts in the beginning when you know that there's that need. I mean, whether it's for retention purposes, whether or not it's these people become part of your family, especially in the very beginning, part of that. So you want to make sure that they're taken care of, or maybe the employees themselves are saying, this is something that I want as a core essential piece. The navigation side of it is not as easy of an answer because, a successful business can be successful a lot of times without employees up to a certain retention point. Most businesses, you'll see, especially small businesses, start out as a sole proprietorship. There's very few that go, yeah, I need 100 employees and I need them yesterday and let's go. So as you kind of start to grow, you experience growing pains, and it all becomes part of your baseline of, what are your expenditures? I mean, it's an investment as well, because, you may be shifting some of your dollars to retain a person versus retraining a new person. But on the other end of that too, you have to realize that this is kind of, view it as like a baby that you started and you have all the hopes and dreams for it. And while you're going through that process, you want other people to buy into that and don't want to get lost in the way where your baby becomes, lost in your endeavors to provide benefits.
Neil, same question. As someone who's traveled this path a couple of times with businesses, what was the impetus that got you concerned, or, hey, I really need to get into this?
Sure. With my first company, I thought it was this leap that we're talking about, where it was all or nothing. So it took us some time, and it was very expensive to go from no healthcare to healthcare coverage. And this was back in 2008. However, nowadays there's so many options where I kind of look at it more as baby steps. What can you offer that's not going from nothing at all to platinum Anthem Blue Cross coverage, group health insurance? And there's so many things in between that you can work on with just small offerings with a health reimbursement account. So allocating a couple dollars a month towards an employee's healthcare costs if they decide to reach out and get it on their own. You can also do split with the employee where you're paying a certain percentage of the healthcare premium. That's actually what I do right now with my employees. So I offer to pay 55%, they pay 45% of the premium. And it feels like that I'm offering them a lower policy cost because it is within a group policy, but then B, that I'm coming out of pocket more than half of the cost. So, it's showing that I do care that they have the benefits. And there's also other things like telemedicine. There's apps out there called Forward, FORWARD, low monthly cost, and you can get group policies through them as well. So a lot of options. I don't look at it as a leap, but a lot of baby steps that you can do in terms of healthcare coverage outside of the workplace.
Sure. Did you yourself go through this path? Because, for instance, I believe that I'm covered, right? So I'm a service-connected disabled vet. So I have VA care. My wife and family are on TRICARE. I'm a sole proprietor. I run all, I'm basically my only employee. And I think I'm good, but I don't know that I'm good until such time as that I'm not, right? And so it's interesting for our community of veterans and military spouses that healthcare is something that is so, vital. It's a basic need. And if I get COVID today, am I really covered? I see on the news that there's the, $1 million bills or whatever nightmare has happened. Does it make sense? Roger, how do we leverage the things that we do have and make sure that we are good, and then also make sure that we're taking care of our people, because that's one of our core tenets from our service?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll address both, I think. But Neil made a great point with that baby steps, because that's my advice to most people, that too. I mean, a lot of times if you feel that overwhelming pressure, there's always things that you can do. I mean, nothing says you have to buy the farm, if you can buy little pieces of it on the way. And then back to your question, Bernie, it hasn't been said yet, but I definitely encourage people, to use people that are, local to you, that know your local legislation and that kind of stuff. And when it comes to coverage, call up your current carrier, utilize that moment to say, I've got these questions, because they should be able to answer that for you. And that's what they're getting paid for. If you're talking about veterans, it's a hot button topic if we're talking about COVID-19, so everybody's going, yeah, I didn't really expect this, but it's not any different than any other illness or injury in the amount of coverage. As long as you're within the network of your current coverage, you shouldn't have a problem with that.
Right. We all think that we have something in place, and then at the end, you really find out how much you had when you get the bill. It's something that is on my mind. I don't think it may be as bad as some of the things you see on the news, but that's a big reason why I wanted to have this today. Can you talk a little bit about how we can leverage our benefits that we do have in place? And Neil, as a business owner, it is a benefit to hiring a military veteran or spouse when they do come with their own healthcare coverage. So how can we maximize these programs to get more?
Sure. So I don't have too much experience with that. I've hired vets in the past, and yes, they've had healthcare through TRICARE, local VA hospital. So it has worked out. Normally, I'm hiring a younger group of employees that might be already covered by the state, such as a plan like Covered California, or under the age of 26, so they still might be on their parents' coverage. I'm not going to lie, it does factor in the early days. It did factor into my hiring practice. Bootstrapping a company, you are looking to keep costs low, and sometimes full healthcare coverage for every employee that you hire is just not in the budget. So you kind of weigh the risks of maybe not getting the best talent possible that's going to request the full health benefits package and everything else that goes along with that. But that's part of starting the business. I wouldn't say cut corners, but it's opportunity costs. Looking for those type employees that already have, especially vets. When I do a job posting on Indeed or Monster, I will put that this job would be perfect for vets. So I do reach out there and try to employ them, but not for the reason of, well, I think they have coverage. So it's a bonus if they work out and they're a vet and they do have coverage. But like I said, when I started up the company, I was looking for employees that are not maybe so concerned about healthcare coverage.
And Roger, your response?
He's right on point. I mean, I've now been doing this for basically since the beginning, the 2010 era, when this all began, and I hear that more often than not. They put things in force that are supposed to protect people that are applying. You can't ask certain questions. You can't ask them their age. You can't, all this stuff on there. But, in the back of your mind, what I hear from business owners is a lot of that stuff is factoring in, because they're trying to figure out, like, let's give an example right now. So under Neil's current thing here, just for an average Blue Cross plan in the state of Iowa, it costs about $400 to insure a 40-year-old per month. So if you look at just that end of it, or whatever, you go, it's very easy to go, yeah, I go down to a 20, or 25-year-old, that money is so much cheaper. Now you're talking about $220. So just with every part of that, so say like Neil, who's paying 55%, which is, great to contribute that kind of amount of money, but that does come into the bottom line. So it's kind of hard not to say, oh, I get that. So I think we're kind of going down a path too with entrepreneurs that are, probably really need some seasoned veteran, and I don't mean veteran as military service connected, but people that have some job skill, and you're missing out on a lot of that because of maybe those intangible factors that that are going to cost you a little bit more money on another side.
Have you seen a difference pre-COVID to post-COVID in terms of this process and how things are going? I mean, is it, there's a segment of us consumers that we're trying to decide when we're going to do this purchase. Is it expensive? Hopefully we never have to use the coverage, so it's kind of a sunk cost. So we want to war game it a little bit. Does it make sense, to wait until after the election because things will change no matter who's in office? But do we wait until after COVID? Do we wait until we test positive? Do we go out and get insurance now before we test positive? There's all these sort of markers that can change the conversation. My sense would be don't ever wait because you don't know when you're going to need it. That's why you have insurance. But what do you think there?
Yeah, you're absolutely on point with that, Bernie. Really, the struggle that we've had, we don't have a large sampling size. If we realize that this all just with COVID only started, in March, right? So what are we, 5, almost 6 months into about the time that everybody's world got turned upside down. So really, yeah, I'm seeing a lot of this, and budgets are even shrunk even more. Unless you happen to be in, and maybe it's helped Neil's business, something in the e-commerce line, where people are getting this shipping, and utilizing that. A lot of people went and said, ooh, I'm now struggling to either produce my product or get my intellectual property out there or whatever it takes. So the production side, their revenues are decreased, but yet the costs continue on. Although on the obverse side of that, they're going, God, there's never more important time because I don't know about the future of what's going to happen. So they're like, yeah, I think we should do it, but I don't know if we can. Do we make that leap, especially a small business who's a little more volatile, and doesn't have the stability in their reserves to be able to go, yeah, we better do this and do it now.
Yeah. I want to shift to a question from the audience. How do I manage designing a healthcare plan for my completely remote business with employees in several states, California, Massachusetts, and Texas in this case? There is no office headquarters, merely employees working out of their homes. And I think that's quite common in this day and age. Recommendation, and by the way, a caveat, this is not Roger selling insurance in all 50 states. This is very specific to your area. So please do contact your locally licensed healthcare provider to get specifics for your case. But Roger, in this generalized question, go for it.
Yeah, this is very, very common. As the world is becoming a smaller and smaller place, we have multiple locations that only make sense, especially when we're moving of goods and that. You have to be in multiple locations where one spot doesn't make sense anymore. And so in that case, just as a general rule of thumb, most plans today, you can get nationwide plans, but with every, the more broad the network is, more coverage it is, the more expensive it is. So most people opt out to, for the state that you're currently in, you get a plan that covers that. It could be even, simple as a statewide HMO, a health maintenance organization type plan. Most people that understand PPO versus HMO, that usually covers at least where you're at. We call those point of service plans.
So it doesn't necessarily, when shopping for these, you don't necessarily have to provide something with broad national coverage. You can pick and choose from a menu of options. Is that an accurate statement?
Nope. I mean, for the most part, I mean, unless your job entails you to travel, you know, coast to coast and stuff like that, most plans are staying pretty local or regional to your area, and there's some reciprocity. You know, if you're close to a state border, those kinds of things where you have coverage. But for the most part, if you look at statistical data, it says that most accidents, most injuries, things like that happen within like 30 miles of your home. Well, that just tells you that, yeah, the majority of your time is pretty much spent within a certain radius. So that's probably where you're going to get your cares.
So a question for you both, Neil from the historical side, and Roger from, you know, having the data that you're available. How do you healthcare wrong? Like what's been sort of the, Neil, for you, it's not that you've done it wrong, but what was that, oh my God, am I doing this right piece that you didn't know if you had it right? And then Roger, what's like the disaster scenario for those of us entrepreneurs who are having this question? Neil.
I think doing it wrong is pretending that it doesn't exist. I think that was, and you know, that happened to me once. If I just not even bring it up, just pretend it doesn't exist, then it should be fine. And that's just not the way to go about it, or the way that I found to be successful. You know, it kind of goes back to a question of, if I can't offer health insurance, what do I do, and what those baby steps are. But, you know, think about inside of the four walls of your business. If you do have a brick and mortar warehouse, restaurant, whatever it may be, what can you do to have a proactive stance on being healthy, especially right now? I've actually found that my employees have been healthier over the past 7 months so since COVID hit, than previously. You know, they'd have these marathon watches on Netflix, come in, wreck the next day, Call of Duty, whatever it may be. And a lot has changed. You know, and of course, I'm coming forward and talking about what we can do to maintain mental and physical well-being, how we can keep the production levels up, what can be done, offering healthy alternatives within the workplace, safety. So I think looking within your work environment and seeing what you can provide real time to your employees, and maybe even changing the state of mind to, you know, making it cool to be healthy, because it really does affect the team when there is sort of a flow of unhealthiness that goes through the operations that I have found. So I have found that being proactive is the best, and not doing anything at all is the worst.
Sure. Roger?
Your question kind of brings two to mind from both sides of the aisle. So I had one, a gentleman who had a small business, same thing. He thought, you know, this is going to benefit everybody. He had a spouse who had a condition or whatever that required quite a bit of treatment. And so obviously, instead of having individual insurance, he could get a group health plan through his work, being the owner, and that's a little bit less, you know, so that makes sense. But where the mistake happened was he decided that what was best for him and his family was the plan, you know, that he offered to everybody. The problem is that without the consultation of what your employees do and how they live their lives and where do they go to get their cares and all that stuff, he come to find out that he picked out a plan that he could use, but the rest of them, for them to take it, they'd either have to relocate to all the doctors that were in this particular network, and the ones that had that, they're like, yeah, I can see this as, you know, a wash, but I won't take it, you know, because of this. You know. The other side of it was, for whatever reason, legacy health consultants and daycares seem to be, you know, a natural fit for us. So we have to go in and do a lot of education, and the key to this part is basically from the entrepreneur side to the employee side. So think of our daycare providers and stuff. In our state, they're making, say, $10 to $12 an hour. Unfortunately, or fortunately for those people, they don't make, or they make enough or whatever, they're just above the threshold in our state or whatever to get, some tax credits for individual plan. Unfortunately, the legislative side of it is as soon as their employer started providing a plan, as long as it was within 10% of the lowest offered plan, which of course they had some plan that was so catastrophic that they had to come up with like 12 grand or something like that.
Sure.
So here you are, a person makes $12 an hour, and if something should happen, they'd have to come up with $12,000. It was cheap enough with the amount of contribution. They couldn't utilize some of the other stuff. So that would be probably a big key that I would tell people, while you're out here and evaluating this as well, is, take into consideration your staff. It becomes a little easier when you get larger because you're just trying to do the best good for the most people. When you're starting out in that small space, when I started doing this and the people that I employ and that are around me, you become family. And so a lot about them, and you can kind of feel their pain. You can ask them those direct questions. And for the most part, you'll usually find and navigate your way that way.
So consultant expert in your state that's familiar with their local, yeah, right. How do you do it right? What's sort of the success story?
So the other end of that is just what I said. When you deal in the business space, the great thing that's different than versus the individual markets, business insurance can start and stop at any month. Like there is no open enrollment when it comes to that. They try to streamline it. You'll usually get hit up, right around the first of the year. Most people do that, or with their fiscal year, to make it so everything kind of runs concurrent. But the good thing is that if you're in a bad space, it doesn't take anything to reconsider and make sure that you're doing what you need to do, or if you need to back off, or you want to increase, or any of that stuff, you can do it every year. There's a little caveat in that most carriers require you to have your information to them the 15th of the month prior to when you want to start. But other than that, as long as you're in a true retail a true business with W-2 employees, you can change. The caveat, you got to be careful and stuff with some of the legislative changes. We've seen a bigger percentage of what looks like insurance out there that are what we call limited benefit plans. And they're not traditional as you get used to, where you have co-payments, deductible with a co-insurance, and then an out-of-pocket maximum. A lot of times it may be, we'll have an indemnity product that pays so many dollars for a hospitalization night stay. And people are, thinking, oh, that's the same because insurance is complex. Yeah, definitely be careful when you're dealing with, the local professionals as well. Mm-hmm. I definitely would tell you to ask certain pertinent questions. The first question would be is, are you a broker? And even be more specific and say, what carriers do you represent? Because that'll lead you a lot of ways. If you have somebody that says, hey, I'm with Freedom Life Insurance, okay, well, that right there, it has a very limited benefit plan and works for some people as long as you know what the risk is.
Yeah. Neil, you were going to jump in?
I was going to lend some advice on how to navigate the payments and what those options are. And Roger touched on something. But what has worked for me is using a payroll service and having that company. So I currently use Gusto, and having that platform do the math, do the allocation, ensure that I'm getting my healthcare benefits tax credits. So I kind of take all of that craziness that I'd have to, God knows how many hours put in to understand. It's almost like doing your 941s, which I avoid, but in the early days I did that paperwork. But having a payroll service that helps allocate those payments, does the math, takes it out of the employee's paycheck, that has really helped. And I would recommend that if you decide to go through your payroll company.
Just quickly, as we're winding up, what about intangible benefits of doing this? Obviously, you're providing healthcare. There's some tax benefits to that. You're going to have your people more likely to be able to do their job at work. Neil, could you talk just a bit about the intangible benefits provided?
Sure. This has never been more clear in seeing the increased productivity and just the overall happiness of the employees. And you know, people over profits all day long. I've definitely learned that starting small businesses, that your team is everything. How they show up in the morning is everything. The energy and the teamwork, the effort that they put forward every day is everything. So by offering these benefits, you know, it really makes my employees feel like that they're appreciated and that I am taking care of them. And, you know, I have a warehouse, it's 3PL. So there's a lot of these in Los Angeles. And for an industry like warehousing and 3PL, it's not known for companies to offer health insurance, benefits, anything other than a couple bucks over minimum wage. So by coming to the table and showing that my employees care, just across the board, it's been all the $5 words, efficiency, productivity, synergies, all of those have definitely shown. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen when you're talking about how this equates to dollars and cents is the knowledge that is retained. So having high retention and low turnover has been my biggest noticeable contributor to profit. In the past 3 years, I've gone through about 50 employees, and this is me, you know, trying to find that perfect team and seeing who's going to work well with others and who's going to really contribute to the success of the operation. And you know, I've built a solid team, and I kind of look at why is that? You know, how have I ensure that everybody's pulling their weight and even above that? And it's offering these benefits. And like I said, it doesn't have to be the big leap. It's those baby steps. It's, you know, in the beginning, I offered gym memberships because I couldn't afford healthcare, little things like that. So you'll see that over time, when you take care of your people and you offer these benefits, it comes around tenfold. And like I said, my number one has been the retention, because to bring somebody in to retrain or to train them, to get them up to speed on all the processes to make the operation successful is a lot of time, a lot of money. Retention's number one, and having those healthcare benefits have really contributed to that.
A related question came in from Facebook. How did you decide what that level of assistance that you're going to provide is, without going into particulars of your own business or your spreadsheets, your P&Ls or any of that? What was some of the decision matrix for you for deciding, you know, at what level you'll come in at?
I had open conversation with my employees. You know, what do you guys need? What do you like?
Right?
Yeah.
Customer discovery.
Yeah. What's your wish list? And I'll meet you somewhere in the middle, and over time, we'll keep working up and offering more and more benefits. And, but in the beginning, you know, just saying to your employees or your first employee, hey, I just can't do it, it doesn't really give anybody any hope. You know, if you truly want to look after your people, give them hope. Say, hey, it is my intention to bring healthcare into this company. Work with me, and along the way, we'll add a little here, add a little there. But the first was just open communication and empathizing with them, saying, hey, I understand how important healthcare is. Let's see what we can do first, being proactive, and then we'll work up to offering those benefits.
Roger, related question. I'm a strong advocate for mental health, and that people are doing the things that they need to be the best versions of themselves. Mental health covered in most plans?
Yeah, that is the key to anything that's considered a creditable coverage plan. So if you have a major medical plan, they include, as one of the 10 essential benefits in it, is mental health, along with drug and alcohol counseling, dietetics, smoking cessation. So there's a big push toward the preventative side. So yeah, all that stuff or whatever. Those are truly some gifts. As this thing has evolved over the last 10 years, what healthcare looks like, I mean, we're outpacing our gross domestic product by about 2.5% every year for just the cost of healthcare. So we got to get some of this wrangled in. So I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to some of this, but I'd also like to just follow up behind Neil and say everything you said is what I hear day in and day out from business owners. That is their big thing. They go, I'm just trying to do it the right way because I know I couldn't have got here by myself. And so if you really have that appreciation for your employee and so like, you're always trying to do it. And from what he said, that's what I advise him too. I was like, maybe that health insurance, goal is not attainable today. I said, but there's stuff you can do. So, a big thing that I'll just throw out as a big pitfall for a lot of people, do not go into the whole, I'm just going to throw them a couple extra bucks in the hope that they will get health insurance. I've just been doing this too long. To them, that's just a raise and they won't have health insurance anyway. But there's a lot of things that help you from a financial or tax side or whatever that you can do. There's 125, if you remember that number or whatever, which are payroll deductions, which can be written off. There's a tax advantage to that. I know right now they're going to have some sort of contact, I believe, on here for anybody who has specific questions. Obviously your area, put that as a caveat for your area. It's going to be very specific, but I've been doing this long enough. I probably have touched most questions that you may have. So I'm happy to help you with that, steer you in the right direction, give you whatever keys to the castle. And hopefully coming soon, by the time the end of the year is here, I'm going to have a site up that'll give people access to all this free information. So as you go through, it'll answer just a lot of the frequently asked stuff and just a forum for you to do what we do.
Yeah, it's a starting point. It's not the be-all, end-all. Do your research, be a good consumer, make the best decisions for your own company. Roger, I really appreciate you offering to do that for our community. And people in other cities, it's been a very common question in the chat as I've been watching the feed, with specific questions for specific states. Reach out to your local city leaders, Google it, do get some advice. You don't necessarily have to pay for that advice. Reach out to those people that'll sit down with you and give you some mentorship on this issue, because I think it's vitally important. It's one of those things where it's too late if you don't have it, because when you need it, right? So it's good planning. And personally, I think it's one of those benefits of being a business owner. You got to pay yourself, and this is part of it. And it's a quite valuable part of it too, because you get a tax break. So thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate both your service, both to the nation and your continued service to the Bunker Labs community. Pending any specific questions that I missed, Liz?
I don't think so. I think
nothing. Okay.
we hit a lot of it.
I do want to talk to the community and just say jump on chapters.bunkerlabs.org for future programming events. There's specifically on September 22nd, we have a Latinx discussion town hall with entrepreneurs and fundraising. You can also reach our calendar on LinkedIn. Go to the Bunker Labs company page and then events on the left-hand side. Thank you all. Really appreciate you being involved and caring about the community, and stay positive and test negative, right?
Absolutely. And I will add that actually coming up before the 22nd, on the 15th, we have a virtual connect, which is an opportunity for you to network digitally, of course, with our entire network across the nation. So we encourage you to also join us for that one. We are going to specifically be talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition during that VConnect as well. Bernie, Neil, Roger, thank you all so much. This topic, I know that we could probably talk for a few more hours on this, but Shelby has dropped a bunch of resources in the chat. I encourage you to check those out. And again, you can email us townhall@bunkerlabs.org with any specific needs. Thank you guys so much.